My name is Sarah Cochran, I'm Chief Curator at the church, and my plea is for you to silence your cell phones. Thank you for being here tonight in celebration of our spring exhibition, The Empire of Water, which is all around you, and of course on Long Island, water is all around us, so that seems appropriate. We have lots of events, so please do follow us at the church sagharbor.org. We have lots of upcoming events, and we really need you to be present. So please know that your attendance here tonight is greatly appreciated, and we hope to see you again soon. We are here in the presence of two eminent artists, and I would like to thank them both so much for this evening, which is going to be a wonderful conversation. Neither of them need an introduction, but because these sorts of events ask for this sort of formality, I would just like to say, obviously, thank you to Ross Bleckner, whose wonderful abstract painting, often meditating on loss and memory, reflects his coming of age during the 1980s and the AIDS crisis. His works have sometimes been cast as memento moris, but they are so much more than that. And I would also like to say thank you to Eric Fischl, again, an artist who needs no introduction, especially here since he and April so kindly founded the church with us. Interestingly, Ross and Eric have known each other since the 1970s, when they attended Cal Arts at the same time, and they obviously moved to the New York City around the same time. So with that, we all look forward to this conversation. Please just sit back and enjoy. Thank you to Ross. Thank you so much for lending us this wonderful painting behind us. We greatly look forward to seeing this. Its loan was essential to the exhibition. So thank you, Eric, and please take it away.
Thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah, it's a great crowd,
And
right?
April,
Yeah.
for doing this.
As Sarah said, I've known Ross since 1971 at California Institute of the Arts. He was painting the exact same painting he's painting now. Just kidding. But in all the time that I've known Ross, I don't think I've ever been this far apart. It seems like a strange space here.
That's the nice thing about painting the same painting for all those years. If you can still be excited to get up and go to your studio and make that painting,
You're on to something.
what more can you ask for?
I was going to start in a more general way, but actually I was just talking to Ross, and he has an opening sentence that I thought would be the perfect way to begin this conversation. He's afraid he's not going to remember it.
Believe me, I said what Eric asked me, do I have anything to say? I said, well, not really actually, but what I could say is this. I believe in God. And what I mean by that is I believe in the God that most painters that I love also believe in. It's the God of awe and the God of trying to do something outside of yourself, trying to connect to the world. It's about trying to find wholeness and completion in myself. And it's a communion with things. It's a divinity. I try to find it in my paintings the way Mark Rothko or Willem de Kooning would try it. But I don't think I get it right. I don't think it's possible. And that's the contradiction that I'm always in. And that's the place which I feel creates the kind of tension that I like in my work that also changes it a lot. Because it's always this kind of, like I was saying to Eric, it's this search for the possibility that if you get into that room and you put things together that you vaguely understand, and you kind of make them and mix them and try to match them or unmatch them, some mutation might occur. And that's the thing I'm always looking for. And this painting actually kind of expresses that, because you can see the cellular structure. And that's always been a kind of a guiding principle in my work, is the kind of the inner architecture, meaning the outside world. So it's like when you're looking to put things together in your studio, that mutation is the atom, the core of, and I think the only real possibility of finding something new in painting. It's like by accident. You know, if you will it to happen, probably not. When it happens, it just happens. And I think it has to do with that experimentation, that possibility, that mistake, actually, that, well, for me, who mixes a lot of my own paint, maybe it bubbled up too long, or, you know, I put the wrong pigment in, or, you know, things like that. That's kind of what excites me. Like this painting, for instance, I forget the title, to be honest. It's about the oceans and about the sky. You know, it's like...
The title's right behind you if you want to read it.
Oh. Here is the ocean. This is Moonlight. You know, it's like, what was I just going to say? It's, you make a painting, I mean, the spectrum of who you are, I mean, all of us are, is broad. I mean, we all have grief. We all have happiness. We all have gratefulness. Sometimes all together and sometimes different times. A lot of people here may know what I'm talking about. Anyway, but I have a lot of happiness too. You know, I always say that things happen to you and for you and in your life, that some of them luck, some of them are misfortune, some by accident, that change things. And you know, we have our spectrum of the times that we're happy, the times that we're joyful, and the times that we could appreciate the things that we're supposed to appreciate or want to appreciate. Sometimes you just can't do it. You just can't, no matter how many times someone says, let's go take a walk, it's so sunny and beautiful. I say, I don't want to fucking take a walk. I want to sit in my bed. Thank you. But anyway, so that's also the way I think, for me, painting is, because, you know, a lot of the way artists are kind of measured has to do really with the iconographic repetition. And that, I mean, I have different things that I go back to, but I would find painting hummingbirds every day really boring. Although I love hummingbirds, and I love when I paint the bird painting. I don't do it that much anymore, but when I did it, it was great. But I walked into my studio one day and I said, if I paint another one of these things, I'm going to slit my throat. So, you know, there's always that place of being in the world where I'm trying to configure and find my way through my inner life emotionally. Because I'm not really interested in pop culture. find other ways to incorporate imagery. I like biology a lot. I like landscape a lot. I like the way things work and the way they don't work as well is very telling and interesting. So in this painting, it's like there's a lot of ways of moving around, and it's like taking a walk. You know, it's like there's a lot of trails. There's a lot of light trails. There's a lot of gravel trails. There's a lot of pigment trails. What I do is, in these paintings, I have a few different ways of working, but in these particular paintings, I burn them with a torch. At first, that's like how I started. I paint it white, I paint it dark, and then I try to get the white to come through the dark by making the dark very liquidy. So when I burn it moves away, you know. It's kind of like what you do with an airbrush, I suppose, or from inside out. And I like that idea that I work back so that you could always see the inside, the inner structure of how a painting is built. So then after that, it suggests itself. It suggests skies and water and bodies. So, I mean, I don't know if I think of myself as an abstract painter or a figurative painter. I think it's so irrelevant anyway that why bother even discussing it unless you're at the New York Academy of Art, which is producing some unbelievable figurative paintings that like blow everything away. I mean, at school, I don't know where they get them.
Not for me.
Huh?
Not for me.
I'm telling you, man, it's lucky you're so good, because if I was a figurative painter now, I'd be shaking in my boots.
Let me ask you something specific to this work that we have in front of us. Sort of painter looking at another painting, right? One of the things and you touched on it in terms of how you love trails and you love to, the sort of landscape thing and the wandering through and the spots of light, et cetera, et cetera. And when I look at this painting, which I've looked at quite a bit over the time or something, and trying to sort of put it all together, I'm struck by a couple of things that I think are actually quite amazing. One is that it leads you in, leads you through, and doesn't lead you anywhere in terms of completion. It's like it's something that takes you into a space and then disrupts it in a way. I'm thinking, for example, at the bottom here, you're led in a sort of planar way with these floating flowers, and then you're whisked through with brush strokes and curlicues to a point where you go up to a staccato kind of tone to the mark making that, as you get up to the top of it, it has this sort of redness which is the same shape as the whiteness, so you think, okay, it started out red and then painted it white, but it doesn't explain how that transition actually happens. And then these paint marks turn into something more concrete because they've got shadows on them, and so it starts to become volumetric, and then that gets disrupted by what seems to be a constellation or a nucleic, chemical structure. And
in a way, that's what it all comes out of it. It's like this primordial mess of stuff that I was trying to cohere somewhere, actually. And I was trying to find, well, where could I make the focus here? Where could I create a density so that there's a spatial a dynamic that's a little more intense? And what's so funny is I'm very open to suggestion.
I know, April's giving you some on other works.
I love it. And so, someone came into my studio, actually, David Sally. And I said, David, this painting is driving me crazy. It's all over the place. I cannot figure out which part I want to work on, which part I want to actually maybe make more imagistic, maybe make float more. He said, Ross, you're nuts. This painting is finished. Leave it alone. And guess what I did? I said, thank you.
Yeah.
You saved me a lot of time. So actually, that's how I ended this painting, by accepting the fact that there was no focal point. I love focal points. I love spatial tension, where there's foreground and background. That, you know, a lot of my paintings have that. They're in dark spaces with light things flying around a lot. Some of them are architectural spaces. Some are landscape spaces. I love painting landscape sometimes, especially since I moved out here and I see it so much. It's kind of hard not to get those shapes in that look like this. Some are geometric.
I mean, I think for painters, it's how do you organize a rectangle or a square or whatever the shape is you're working in. How do you organize it in a way that if you let people leave the visual plane, there's something that brings them back, or creating a painting in which you never let them leave, that as they go to an edge, something pulls them back inside. All that kind of orchestration.
What ends up happening is that within this very, not big space, I found it to be very enveloping, because my eye never really settled anywhere. I mean, I guess for the most part it settles on those little cellular structures, but I kind of made them purposely small, just to create the sense that that's where all of this stuff, the stuff, the lyrical stuff of the movement.
It's not the first thing you see, obviously. When you look, it's not the first thing you see. You see the broader strokes or the things that
it's
pop you around.
I'm also very interested, besides from like all that, the kind of sublime and divinity of how you're inspired, really. I'm actually also interested in the physicality of what paint does, the chemistry. So like, oh my God, look at this, just do that. Well, what would this brush do with this amount of paint? Well, and then what if I scrape it off? So take a rag and move it.
To get this straight, you approach divinity with a question.
Yeah, like how can I find
It's like, what the fuck is this gonna do?
Exactly. It's how could I find it and where am I located in it? Which is usually nowhere. Nowhere and everywhere. It's one of those things. It's like, how, as an artist, do you find who you are and what you want to say?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it's okay, I mean, even just from a Buddhist perspective, to not have an answer to that always. To let it be open-ended and let the viewer decide, really, so that it becomes an kind of a dialogue, some paintings, the paintings that I like the least are the ones that you kind of get right away, and you can, like kind of art fair paintings that are shiny and bright and cartoony pop. They stick out, they're shiny, so that you see them. And the other side of it is things that have more complexity, more subtlety. You might have to, God forbid, look for a few minutes.
I had a friend said to me once, he said there are two kinds of art experience. There's the one where you look at something and go, huh? And then the longer you look, you go, oh. And then they're the ones, or wow, he said wow. And then the other one is you go, wow, and then go, huh? Yeah.
That kind of sums it up. And I think as artists, at least if speaking for myself, I like to have a little, if you have a body of work, you have hopefully some of all of that in the body. Maybe not in one painting, but some paintings are much more out there and up front and in your face. I mean, I do these dome paintings, these architectural paintings, I used to do these very optical, vibratory paintings, which I used to think of as hallucinatory Barnett Newmans.
These are the stripe paintings?
Yeah. I would think if Barnett Newman was alive today and he took acid, these are the paintings he made. I mean, you know, and I also like the idea of how you can incorporate a modern psychedelia. You know, not that I'm into psychedelic stuff, although I do like it. But just the idea that you could spread your consciousness as far as you want, really. And you learn that if you take stuff. And, you know, I mean, this is kind of like a little off track, but what the fuck, right?
We're among friends.
I have a house in the Springs, right near the Lagoon. So this kind of shaman came over, and I did this thing called Bufa. Well, I tell you, you want to change your life and change your perspective fast.
Tell them where it comes from.
It comes from, it's a natural, it's not as that. It comes from the gland of a frog in the Sonoma Valley in Mexico. And they squeeze it, and you smoke it, and there's a guy who administers. It is not a party drug, believe me. You do not do it often. But it changes everything. It's like my big fear. I always had this big fear that de Kooning's house was a block away, and I'm not de Kooning. So I did the goof up, and I finally said, so what the fuck? I'm not de Kooning, I'm me. You know, just but to accept that actually was like, you know, like the way I was so afraid to draw, like a face, a head. And then I drew these heads that were fantastic. I loved them. It kind of changed perspective because what happened is you fractalize. It's not kind of ego, called ego loss, but you basically fractalize and become part of the atmosphere. You become atmospheric. What can I say? It's over. And you see your head open and you see things in it, the mechanism, and you actually have a few minutes to move things around and even take a few things out. And then you realize how big the cosmos is and how you're in it from ashes to ashes. We're in it for so short a time. And I'm worried about this idiotic thing, about whether this is drawn like that or like that. I mean, what does it matter? Just do it. So anyway, I'm not advocating. I teach at NYU, and it's so funny because you know in this environment now, I was telling them, "I'll open your mind." You know, basically, in the indigenous people, they did psychedelics on kind of initiation, a rite of passage, etc. Mushrooms, they found them everywhere. They knew what was what. I mean, this shit's gone on thousands of years. And it opens up the range of your mind. Now, the reason why it wouldn't work daily or even regularly is because we wouldn't be able to communicate with each other. The range of communication, mental communication, has to stay it has to stay very narrow, actually, so that we could have a dialogue and each understand each other. If we're all tripping on something, it would be just out of control. But that said, I think to experiment with consciousness, which is exactly what painting is about on the bottom line, the experimentation with consciousness. It's about consciousness and how it works, how thoughts are thought, how they deconstruct, how they reform, how they change through the process. You can talk conceptually as much as you want, but in the end, it's actually through a process. For a painter, the process is obvious.
I remember vividly when you showed your strike paintings, your psychedelic Barnett Newman paintings that you said, which of course weren't, but one thing that was so striking about them was to approach what by that time had been a kind of canonical structure of, abstract stripes, went through a whole bunch of artists previous to you. And so you go within within that genre, so to speak, and then decide to put some numbers on, or a flower, or something that so negated the perfect flow of abstraction, of purest abstraction or whatever, for something so sort of jarring to the way we understand how the object looks or where it fits in time and space, etc. And it seems as you're talking, your process is one of continuous disruption, reinvention, exploration.
Well, I would hope there'd be a little reinvention, but that's a big word.
What would you choose?
Reconfigure, and you hope.
Hit and miss? Would you go with hit and miss?
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. A lot of miss, believe me. But I usually work on a lot of paintings at the same time, and I keep them in my studio, and I stay on one until I can't, and then I move. But as long as it's in my studio, sometimes I'll walk in at night and the solution will just pop into my head. So I'm always waiting for it's like, I always do the double down trick. I'm either gonna ruin it or I'm gonna make it a little better. I always try to make it a little better. So that's why it's good.
You call it a double down, but
Well, you double down on
double down.
Double down on what you're gonna do when you don't know where to take it, and you let that be. You accept that, okay, this has no place to go. This has no form. This has no center. Just like me.
In search of the center.
What?
In search of the center. When you started off by talking about.
Look, our center shifts based on the world we live in. And the world we live in has shifted so much that, everybody, there's a kind of darkness to it. So I feel like, how I'm not a political painter either, but I don't see how you can't live in the world and reflect the political climate. And I think, when I was making abstract paintings in the 80s and all this AIDS stuff started, I thought to myself, this is like a rupture in consciousness, in the industrial optimism of the 50s and 60s, where everything was supposed to get better, each generation was supposed to get better. Suddenly we're stuck now, and the fissure of the possibility of early mortality hung this kind of dark cloud over many and everyone's life here, we've lived from pandemic to pandemic, basically. Our lives are bracketed by virus. You know, what's so interesting is that I think, why are we so arrogant that we didn't think if we fuck up the earth, it's not going to fuck us up too? They have as much right to be on this earth as we do. And we're just vectors for them. We're big deals to ourselves. But it's just a bunch of things trying to reproduce and keep going. They've been doing a better job than we have. And they will continue to. And I think that's actually very humbling. The whole thing of the past couple of years. And then, of course, the political changes is that everybody was dissatisfied with the idea of post-war liberal democracy. It just didn't work. It became winner-take-all economy. And, you know, I don't know, if you read actually Noah Yuval, what's his name? Harari, a great book, because he really talks about there's no such thing as natural. All of this stuff is fiction, religion, fiction. We all make our fiction to make meaning, but none of it has to stay that way. There was a time when people did what they were told because they really believed that the authority from God that the king had was the only authority. And that got the feudal system, that got right. But I always say, how do you talk about postmodernism? There is no postmodernism. What we really are, when you're going to look back in 1,000 years, is we're actually in the late Middle Ages. So that's, if you want to talk about post-Middle Ages, talk about post-Middle Ages, because they were going to have a cure for a simple virus yet. That to me is pre-modern. It's like living in, we're like living during the Black Plague. It's just also humbling, and we should all just a little bit of time we have here. You just have to, I guess, just do the best you can with it and participate in the way that you can. I do it through making paintings. I also did it through AIDS activism, which thank God I don't have to do anymore. But it's over so fast, you know.
When you go in your studio, you got to shut some of that out, right? How do you do that?
Well, the thing is that, like I said, I just actually, there's the other side. I don't mean to be morose.
You just are.
I am actually not really. I'm very exuberant and optimistic. I always call myself an alcoholic optimistic, whatever that means. But there's also, I get a lot of joy in my work. My work actually brings me pleasure. I'm happy to be able to wrap my anxious mind around something that I can actually make and control with my hands. And it's a very simple process. I don't want a factory. I don't want a million people working for me. I don't want to be an art director. I don't want to sit in Photoshop all day. I actually love making things. And as long as that gives me pleasure and joy, then I actually wake up early, and I'm excited to go to my studio because I like solving problems. And I guarantee there's always a problem to solve in your studio that you left over from the day before, the week before, and friend Uzi said, if you have no problems and you have nothing to do, sweep the floor. And that's actually what I do.
Right.
I clean up.
Clean your palate. I hope someday you all get to see his studio in terms of how he organizes his paintbrushes, his palettes, his color. He's a total alchemist when it comes to making his paints and stuff like that. They're cleanly labeled, clove oil and walnut
I
oil.
got that from my mother. She would walk around after anybody with a rag and they'd open the refrigerator and she'd be there and wipe the refrigerator. And if there was a housekeeper, I could clean better than that. She was really into that OCD thing, which I actually think is got a little of it, but it's a meditation.
Yeah.
Remember, it really is. I could rearrange brushes for hours, and it's so enjoyable. I don't know why. I could clean them again and again, rearrange them again and again. No, this big one would be maybe over here. Next to this one, there's a little littler, but not bigger. And then I change it the order. The little one's there, and the big one's there. I mean, that's all part of it. That's all the kind of, it's kind of the accessorizing, really, but it's actually, for me, a lot of fun. I mean, usually, I don't let my assistant clean anything because I freak out if he moves something in the wrong place. I can't go there. And I've had assistants who've worked for me and got so irritated at my way of doing things. And I would say to them, you can't be so messy. And then they got their own studio and they call me up and say, you know what, I got it. I get it now. It's happened too many times. I mean, even when I go into student studios, the first thing I say, I feel like my mother, I say, how can you think this place is disgusting?
Don't go into April's studio.
But some people
I should say studio / recycling center.
But some people, listen, I actually believe that some people thrive on, on the kind of chaos and the everything of it.
Mm-hmm.
And why I respect them, I think they must be really smart because they must have great memory and recall. And I don't. Like, if I put something in the wrong place, I'll spend an hour looking for it.
Yeah.
So everything has to be in the same place all the time.
Yeah.
If my studio were a mess, I would spend all day looking.
I love the idea. The picture you're creating is one of absolute order, precision, control, which prepares you to go into a universe that is not.
Yeah, that's not that really. Because I kind of, it's like something has to be in order for you to allow something to kind of open up and not have the order. Because if I can't find the center in my painting, I can find the center on my painting table. So it's like a compensation.
Before we open it up to questions, which, by the way, Ross earlier said to me, are we going to have questions? I said, yeah. He said, can we have them right away? Anyway.
I was afraid I didn't, I'm sure you don't come with a spiel. I don't really have a spiel about my work.
One thing that you mentioned at the beginning was about divinity, about God and divinity, etc., as an aspirational aspect of the painting, the work itself. And then you described your process of searching in a very existential way. And I was struck by thinking that in order to do that, you have to believe in the sacredness of the object itself. That there has to be some, this is not a casual affair that you have with
I
some,
do. Well, what I believe
whatever,
in, what I
and-
believe in is how I take it is, I believe in the interconnectedness of the object with the world passing, I know there's some point, but passing through us. I mean, which it actually does, because we form it from nothing to something. And I can tell, actually, maybe there's something I gave you. Well, you talk about feeling, and soul becomes a major manifestation of the feeling of light that we have in us, sometimes that we try to express. That, I think, drives us to be artists, because it's all about being hurt and being fixed. I think that's where the soul comes in. When I see work, I don't talk about it, but I know if it has soul or not. I think it means connections. The work that I like, that I can see the connection between the spiritual, the chemical, the physical. I could see the body and the work that came through the hand. That's the work I like. There's other work I like too that doesn't require that. But my favorite work is that has that transference of materiality into, you know.
yeah, it's like inside to outside, through the body.
Yeah, it just that I might be that I feel the connectivity between some objects that I am looking at, and that the person, that thought about them, and the feeling they put into it, and it creates this kind of circularity. So the communication is between the maker and the looker. That to me, you know, I know, you don't use the word soul when you talk about contemporary art, but I like to use it in my own way, and that's really, to me, it just means the connectivity. I don't mean the soul. I'm not into like all that bullshit.
To me, it's a miracle of wonder that a painting can have presence.
Presence?
Yeah, that it can sit on a wall and actually feel like it contains animation, so animate like it contains a person or a thought or an intention or something. Then you can read it, you can feel it, you can understand it, and it goes across time. I mean, you can look at something that's 400 years old and feel like the person is there. You know, you see every decision made, every intention.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, that's the kind of paintings you like and the kind of paintings I like. Obviously, not everybody likes those.
Where are they?
Huh?
Where are those people
That like them or don't like them.
that don't like that?
Oh, a lot of them. Go to any art fair.
You want to see if there are any questions? There's some questions, yeah. We got, go ahead, yeah.
So Ross, we've been in your studio many times with you. One of the most interesting aspects of it is when you just arbitrarily walk over to one of the paintings. You just arbitrarily walk over to one of the paintings that you're doing, and you walk us through your thought process. What it is now, and what you want it to be at the end. So what did you do with it?
What did I do with this?
What's this painting all about?
What was the thought process you're saying?
For this painting.
Well, the thought process in these paintings is actually I actually think of them as destruction of imagery painting. Like, I actually think of them as resurrection paintings. Like, I take them and I burn the shit out. And then, when I have this kind of ruin, I rebuild it. I rebuild it. I try to find where the atmosphere is, where the land is, where the center is, if there is one. You know, where the geometry is, if there is geometry. You know, here, I just put in suggestions of things without being explicit. I mean, I could have painted a bunch of flowers, and you would have gotten the picture of, you know, over there, a couple of circles of them, a couple of whatever. But I wanted it to just move around by itself. And like I said, I didn't think I was finished with it. I really didn't. And so I just put it aside and sat with it. I mean, you can see those white dots going across up there, and then up there. You know, I just took a roller and put a little white one, you know, and then put the shadows underneath just to give it a little depth. And like I said, I was waiting to figure out where it all was going to come together until someone came to my studio and said, leave it be, you should just chill out. Sometimes it's hard to chill out. But it doesn't hurt.
Laura, you had a question?
I was just wondering, you were talking about the connectedness that you like to feel in your work, and how you sense it when you're looking at someone else's work. Is there an artist or something that you can think of, or maybe one piece that you know you have a really great emotional connection with or reaction to?
Yeah, I can actually think of an instance of an artist, a younger artist. She knows everything I know. It's when I was teaching actually at Columbia University, in the graduate program. I walked into a first-year student's studio named Dana Schutz. I watched her paint. I just couldn't believe it. Like, she was her painting. Her hand, her eyes, her coordination, her body, her hair, the way the paint came out, the way it went in the brush, the way it went on the canvas, the way she moved it was like, I said, if anybody criticizes you and tells you to stop doing what you're doing, tell them to get the fuck out. I said, you are perfect. And it's true. I mean, I actually thought of her in that way, where I can feel her paintings. I can feel her body, her hand, her arm, her heart, the whole thing. I mean, I don't know what people here think of her. I happen to think she's a terrific painter. What do you think, Eric?
I love her work. Dana Schutz.
She shows up tomorrow night. She used to show at Petzl. She started out. She hit the ground running, I'll tell you.
Hey, Ross.
Right.
Just a technical question. When you say you're burning the shit out of
Hit the mic.
When you say you're burning the shit out of the painting, you taking a torch to paint on canvas?
Yeah.
Wow. You don't burn the canvas?
No. I've learned how to do it just right. I mean, you have to do it quick. And, you know, I have to make the paint certain thickness that's underneath. Let it kind of dry a little bit so that when I put the darker on, it doesn't blend together too much.
What does that do? What was the process, that burning process that you do?
It takes away the layer. It kind of, like if I would do this with the torch, it will burn away the black, and you'll see the white. It will be, you know, if I do it fast.
So you have 2 or more layers of paint, you're burning off one layer?
Yeah. I mean, I can do that with more layers and keep going, and I've done that too, but it's really about the fun I have with the chemistry. I mean, obviously, if you put too much of this in, or you put too much of that, it doesn't do it right. Sometimes you know, it will burn.
So Ross, do you have a different binder for the white than for the black, or that is also part of how it separates, or like what is the medium for the black?
The medium for the black is oil with turp. But you have to be really careful with the amount of turp, because the other thing,
Well, you know, it's an alchemical process, right?
Right.
Heat is an alchemical, is the basic fundament of an alchemical process. What you're trying to do in that process is convert matter into spirit.
Well, yeah, I mean,
purification.
that's what we've been talking about,
Exactly.
essentially.
So but it's also about like the illusion that creates, that separates you from that process in a way. Like you're not really responsible for how that heat is occurring. That's a physical chemical reaction, but you're enabling that to occur. So in that kind of process of enabling, you're creating the illusion that in a way you are, that you are God. You said
You know, so I have a lot of equipment, a lot of tips, like wide ones and little teeny ones, that I can make a line that kind of like, I did these self-paintings that kind of had twisting, petri dish kind of things, with that, like that, just like, because it creates a puddle. I obviously would do that flat. It makes little puddles.
What I've discovered is that, like, sometimes, when you're in this kind of element of play with material like this, if you're enabling the material to describe itself, like you kind of step out of it, you enable it, but then you step out of it, and that's when the kind of magic
I
happens.
mean, I'm always looking for new ways, for new things
Yeah.
to make a mark,
Yeah.
and new things. I mean, now I just look on Instagram and go to the reels. Some of that stuff is really cool.
There's a question up there, or no? Just a waving.
I'm just saying,
Okay.
how did that first come to you, the thought of heating the paint? How did that first,
By mistake, painting, actually, just like the stripe paintings were mistakes. So many of my paintings start out as little small mistakes, like crossing out a painting. Like, oh, this is cool. Or, like, I wanted to, I was working on a little painting a long time, and I just wanted to, like, get the paint off, and I just saw the torch. I thought, let me see what happens, but maybe it will turn into color. I thought maybe it would turn into this cool color, but that didn't happen. Something else happened, like some kind of chemistry. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is playing. That's what, to me, the joy of the chemistry is, and also the problem solving that I find very pleasurable, actually.
So you're a mad scientist.
Huh?
You're a mad scientist.
I'm not mad, I'm not a scientist.
Hey, April, you had a question?
Oh, I just wanted to ask if there were a spot on this painting that you could point to and say, see, this is where I burned it.
This way, I don't.
This is where I burned it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of places where you could actually see the canvas. When you look close.
Don't touch the art.
Okay. Yeah, so when you're looking up, you can kind of right here, for instance, if you look, a lot of these, like right here, this opening, is an opening into the torch hitting the painting, hitting the painting, you know. When I went like this, it happens some places, and then it doesn't happen other places.
And do you think of this painting as having like a shallow surface depth or a deep surface?
A what?
A shallow depth of surface? Or
Yes,
deep?
I do.
Yes. Okay, because I actually think, I love the title of this painting so much. That's how I remembered it. Because I do literally think that it is so much like to fix a cosmos as what Moonlight on Water represents makes so much sense to me, because it's constantly shifting and twinkling and kind of evaporating and then reforming itself, and that's exactly what this does.
Well, I mean, for me, this painting was a little difficult because I thought it wasn't finished, and it didn't cohere, and it really grew on me. Like, I don't really say a lot that I love my paintings, because I don't love them mostly. I mean, some I like a lot,
I know what you mean.
but not all. But this painting really grew on me, and I really like it now because of all the things I didn't want, or I wouldn't have wanted, that I got used to. Sometimes it's just a question of when you do something, and you can't take it any further, you're just not used to it yet. I mean, that's how new work happens. When you're kind of ahead of yourself, and you're trying to get it to be like the work you want, but it's not. So you put aside, and maybe in a few months, you go, oh, now I'm kind of used to this. And suddenly your work started going in that direction anyway. You know, I think those are the openings that artists find to create new shapes, and new images, and new, ways of putting things together. That are not in their comfort zone necessarily. I mean, I love to work in my comfort zone, but I mean, I don't know really what it is. So.
I don't think you have
But right now, it's very uncomfortable. That's all I can say.
Ross, I don't think you're a comfort zone kind of guy.
But I'm sick of it at this age, It's like you get to a point and say, what am I going to be? Like, calm.
So I don't know what my question is, but here it goes. After you had the hallucinogenic experience,
The what?
the hallucinogenic experience,
Yeah.
the comfort zone is kind of amplified, but also possibly diminished. But how did that, because there is this kind of pushing, pulling thing between like what is reality, what is important, what is,
Well, it's a very short, by the way, it was a very short experience. It was like 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
You don't have time for all that.
Okay, so
You just kind of reorganize the priorities in your brain, and you kind of get a better perspective, I think, about what you should think about and what you don't really need to think about.
So that not thinking enables you to create paintings in a more free way, perhaps?
Well, it helps you, it helps you to be free to not worry if you're doing it right.
Right, but also the ego.
Like, not worry, that's the part that you kind of, it comes back. I mean, it doesn't last forever. But for a while, you get this insight into things could be different, and no one gives a shit.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just a bunch of molecules.
Huh?
You're just a bunch of molecules.
It's like people think, what do other people think about me, or what do they think about that work? I would say, guess what? They're not thinking about you or your work.
Yes.
So don't worry about it.
But when I think of
Just
it,
don't do it.
Can I just say one thing about my interpretation of the painting that didn't come up, but what did was this idea of, like living through the time of AIDS. The yellow, the white roller spots with the shadows on them, for me, that was, tombstones. The light and the darkness is, life.
Well, this is actually the age of
eternity.
This is painted very,
It's recent.
2021.
But you've been painting the same
something,
painting.
I painted a lot of paintings that became much more like taken from this. I kind of got much more back into the whole biology of who we are. I painted a lot of paintings, abstract and a little more figurative, that had to do with lungs and breathing.
Right.
Like breathing. Paintings that, went like, and then kind of had shapes and spines. But you don't, like one painting I painted with a spine in a room, the lungs are kind of like, lyrical things on the top. And the line was flowers, just a line of flowers, but it was really a backbone. So it's like looking from the back into the lungs, like an x-ray.
I think I can speak for everybody here tonight. We really enjoyed the experience of your being expressed through the pain.
To be what?
Your being, like who you are as a living being, expressed through this pain and all of your pain.
God,
and I've never had that.
Here.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just going to try to say thank you.
I'm trying
That's all.
to get away.
Thank you.
That's really
Can I ask one last question? You get such a wonderful transparent stroke. Do you have a secret concoction for your medium that you could reveal? Concoction of medium that you could reveal?
Yeah, a few of them.
Well, these bottom
Like a gel medium mixed with, if you really want to know, what do I care? It's like this thing that, gel, those gel mediums that you squeeze out, oleopasto, cold wax, hot wax. I go to Kramer and I find out that's very good. You know Kramer? It's in Oxford, New York. Very good. Fun too, beautiful.
dry pigments and
Dry pigments, a lot of mediums, shit from Germany, they had to make things in Germany.
all that shit from Germany.
Yeah.
Should we talk about it as a people now?
Yeah, behind us.
We forgot all about the keeper.
He's not here, so we're talking about you.
All right.
Anyway, let's thank everybody for.
It's so beautifully painted. Just the transition